I'm just so excited to see Francis back in the small gloves as well. We're really seeing, of course, Ngannou, who's the pound for pound heavyweight king right now, but that position could quite easily be replaced very quickly by Ferreira. People don't quite realise how lethal he is.
I want to get your Mount Rushmore of top British fighters.
I mean, you've got to put Michael Bisping up there as number one.
What about Brendan Loughnane?
You know, if he picks up another, PFL title this year, I think we're going to be talking about Brendan as one of the best of all time from the UK. But I'll be one of the pebbles that falls off Michael Bisping's nose.
Kwaku Afari here for talkSPORT MMA, and I'm joined by a very, very special guest. Dan Hardy joins me. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. Really good.
Been a little while since we last talked. I think it was just before Savannah Marshall Fought. It was an incredible night that you guys put on. How you find your role as the head of fighters operation at PFL?
It's good, man. I mean, it's busy every day because obviously, you know, you have a 10, 12 fight card matched, and then someone gets injured or, you know, they get sick or whatever, and then you have to find a replacement for that. And, you know, there's every day there's something that you're not expecting to happen that you've got to kind of, you know, get on top of. But I've got a good team of people around me, and you know, we're fortunate enough to be one of the shows in Europe that everyone wants to get on.
Yeah.
So, you know, finding replacement for fighters is not too difficult. And
in terms of yourself, I last talked to you and you talked about maybe having the itch and maybe getting back in there. You getting that itch again, or are you all right in terms of your role you're doing right now?
I'm so busy at the moment. Yeah. You know, finding time to fit in a training camp would be very difficult. But yeah. I mean, the buzz is always there. You know, especially when I'm sitting cage side and I'm watching these fighters, and I'm just like, man, I remember that adrenaline rush and that excitement, and. Yeah. You know, we'll see. I've talked about it a few times recently, and you know, there's a couple of people I may be you know, interested in getting in there with, but we'll see, right? I've got to start thinking about prioritizing things, and you know, my role with the PFL and making sure PFL Europe is strong and thriving has got to be top of the list.
And when we look at the wider landscape of the organisation, big news. Francis Ngannou obviously back in the cage on October the 19th. talkSPORT, we're out in Washington for his press conference, obviously face-to-face with Ferreira as well. How excited are you to have potentially the baddest man on the planet back in the cage?
Man, I'm just so excited to see Francis back in the small gloves as well. You know, I enjoyed his stint in boxing, and I wouldn't mind to see him go back into boxing and have a couple more fights, but you know, he's most dangerous in the small gloves, and it'll be the first time we've seen him in the smart cage. We have also seen how dangerous Ferreira is as well. You know, he's 6'8". He can travel through range as quick as Ngannou can. He's got power in both his hands and his feet, and then the work that he's done at American Top Team on his ground game is really going to make this a very competitive matchup. I think we're really seeing, of course, Ngannou, who's the pound for pound heavyweight king right now, but that position could quite easily be replaced very quickly by Ferreira. People don't quite realise how lethal he is right now.
That's what I was going to say. I think because of the name, brand of Francis Ngannou, everyone's almost overlooking Ferreira, but he's a beast. He's a physical specimen. How big he is, how fast he is. People talk about him beating any heavyweight in any organisation. How good of a fighter is he?
I mean, I don't really think we know how good of a fighter he is right now. I think we've seen big improvements in his game recently, but I don't think we've seen the full extent of the improvements. I mean, you know, you take someone who's 6'8", who can punch very, very clean and straight and accurate, who's got great kicks as well, and you add a ground game to them, so then you give them the confidence to start opening up and throwing those techniques. Like you see what he did to Ryan Bader, and Bader's no joke. Yeah. Strong wrestler. You know, knocked out Fedor. He's got a very well-respected and established position in the heavyweight division. Ferreira just ran through him like he was yesterday's news. Scary. And I think he could do that with the vast majority of heavyweights. You know, the one real question is, can he do it to Ngannou? Yeah. And if he does, then he's going to be the talk of the town.
It's going to be Ngannou's first fight in the smart cage. Is ring rust a thing, as much of a thing in MMA as it is in boxing?
Yeah, it depends on the fighter, really. I think some fighters do suffer for it because they believe in it. And I think other fighters don't suffer from it because they don't give it any attention. You know, when we talk about ring rust, we're talking about not being in the physical condition to compete. And we know that's not the case with Ngannou. We've seen him look fantastic in his boxing fights and great physical preparation for that. But the other thing as well is, you know, when people talk about ring rust, they talk about timing. And Ngannou's going to have much better timing than the last time we saw him in MMA because of his time spent in boxing. You know, Tyson Fury's a big, rangy individual who's good at fighting at distance. I would imagine there's lots of things that Ngannou learned in that training camp that he's going to be able to use against Ferreira. And then you put those small gloves on and you add his power to it. It's going to be terrifying to see.
I'm looking forward to that one. Mount Rushmore's are the talk of the town at the moment, so I've got to ask you. I want to get your insight on there. Bellator Champion Series is in London. So I want to get your Mount Rushmore of top British fighters.
British fighters. Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, you've got to put Michael Bisping up there as number one. Man, after that, it's difficult because there are old fighters that were like before my generation, like Ian the Machine Freeman, right? Like he belongs on my Mount Rushmore purely for his fight at the Royal Albert Hall when he beat Frank Mir.
Yeah.
Like that was a turning point for me as well as for a lot of other British fighters to see that moment and to aspire to be in that position. So for me, I've got Ian Freeman, I've got Michael Bisping. Man, who would I go after that? Probably Paul Daly.
Okay.
I'd probably put Paul Daly in there. I've been hit thousands of times by that guy. I wouldn't like to take any more shots.
Yeah.
And then after that, I mean, you would talk about someone maybe like Molly McCann, I think, especially the impact she's had recently. Even Paddy Pimblett, you give him a couple more years, and I think he could move himself up that list.
Not putting yourself in there?
Oh, no, I would never.
Really?
I would never. No,
you were a trailblazer, though, in terms of, and you're not going to give yourself that credit, but in terms of British MMA, you were the first British fighter that came to my attention.
I'll be one of the pebbles that falls off Michael Bisping's nose. No, look, like I understand, I appreciate that, I do absolutely, but for me, I was kind of like in the middle of everything. I was after Ian Freeman. I was around the same time as Michael Bisping, you know what I mean? And then obviously the fighters that have come after me they've had such a greater impact because the sport's so much bigger.
Yeah.
And I also have to take into consideration what they're doing outside of the cage as well. The impact that Paddy Pimblett's having on men's mental health, that counts. That counts very highly for me because it's not only about having the position; it's about what you do with the position.
Yeah. What about Brendan Knockname?
Man, he's right up there.
Yeah,
he's right up there. Look, if he picks up another, PFL title this year, I think we're going to be talking about Brendan as one of the best of all time from the UK.
Definitely. And how do you think he gets on in the final?
Look, it's a tough fight. There's no doubt about it. But Brendan knows what he's up against, and the difference here is he's got 5 rounds, right? I think fighting this guy over 3 rounds, you could definitely lose 2 rounds just being drowned with his wrestling ability. But the takedown defense that Brendan's working in Thailand up against all the Russian wrestlers that are out there, I think he's going to give him a good standing in takedown defense and also the confidence that he can get there in the end. But it's a tremendously tough fight for him, and I don't think we can count either of these guys out. I'm just excited to see if he can solve this undefeated problem.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.